So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break. Before the before the morning break, we started exploring some simple things you can do to step into this role as an excellent, exquisite, masterful conversational hypnotist a bit more. Would that be fair to say? And we picked up a whole bunch of things. You got the ideas of talking a little bit more with authority, and I might as well add that in there as well. Oh, that got interesting. Authority, that's my version. There you go. You got the idea that coaching them in becoming physically more better trance subjects actually had an enhancing quality to it. There's some idea around doing something similar with their mindset that you've been thinking about at the lunch break. Would that be fair to say? Have you been doing some of that? Yeah? Some people are like, yeah, I did, but no, I didn't. It's fine, you'll get to jump in the deep end and get creative in a moment. Definitely the idea of altering your voice qualities has something to do with this enhancing effect we're looking for. And of course, ratifying, letting them know that they're doing a good job and pointing out things they're doing well already is also pretty useful, right? So we've collected a number of things. What I'd like you to do now is do the same thing again with a partner, 20 seconds apiece. And I'd like you to just fill in as many of those things as you can in those 20 seconds. In other words, focus primarily on these idea of hypnotic thoughts that you're going to be introducing, but carry on coaching them some physical characteristics, or keep reminding them they're doing some good things as they're going along. See if you can alter your voice qualities and make it more, quote-unquote, hypnotic, whatever that means to you. In other words, what can you do to enhance the experience that's anything but the actual words that you're using? Make sense? Focus on the trance signals and the hypnotic thoughts, and then we'll see where that takes us. So let's be kind to you guys. I'm going to give you 30 seconds apiece. That means it's 1 whole minute in total. Woo, this is like the longest time you've had so far. New partner, off you go. So how was that? Was that interesting? Was that fun? Not too taxing, I hope, except that there was not much time, was there? All right? It's going to get worse, don't worry. Okay, guys. So you've kind of put everything together so far, and it's starting to have more of an enhancing quality. Who as a, let me just put this on. Who here as a subject, pretending to be the world's greatest subject, is starting to feel a little bit good now, actually, as a result of like them talking? Who is getting to the point, even in just those 30 seconds, where you think, when I say it's time to switch roles or come back now, you're going, no, let him carry on a bit. This is nice. Anyone getting to that point? Of course, you're just doing that because you're pretending really well, aren't you? Or does something else happen when you pretend a bit too much? Just an idea. Now, the next question I have for you guys is, whilst you were doing all this coaching and talking to them and presenting some hypnotic thoughts and so on, did you notice them doing something which looked more hypnotic, but which they might have difficulty doing on purpose? So, for example, if someone's eyelids started fluttering, anyone see their eyelids sort of fluttering a little kind of wildly? Or their eyes kind of spinning around like they're part of The Exorcist or something? So you notice little things like that happening? And maybe notice some people have different versions of it, but you might see the pulse on their neck slowing down. Some people see it on the arms or the ankles, something like that. These are things people can't control consciously. These are not inside of their voluntary control, are they? Right? So there are some things that are occurring that are involuntary, but it would be kind of nice to be able to coach them to do that too, right? So I'd like you to have the experience of doing that, except we'll see how easy it is or how hard it is to do, right? So for the next one, we're going to take your time back a little bit to about 20 seconds. You can do as much of this stuff as you want. That's fine. But the only thing I want you to actually focus on, so please don't do any of the other stuff at the expense of this. is when you're coaching them their trance signals. Relax your shoulders, that's something they can consciously do. Change your breathing, that's something they have conscious influence over. But if you're going to add something that would make them look more hypnotic, that they have no conscious control over, like eyelids fluttering, eyes maybe rolling up, or going to REM movements, pulse changing, temperature changing, things like that. Go ahead and suggest that anyways, in other words, as part of the coaching, and see whether it helps or takes away from the experience. Do you understand the nature of this exercise? Any questions? Very quickly, 20 seconds apiece, off you go. So how was that? Was that interesting? Can we have a mic ready, please? Jakob? So just stand up and we'll get the mic to you. Let's make some spaces in here to make Jakob's journey a little easier. Thank you.
For the first time, I let go.
Very good.
When you said, right, that's it, and he said to me, up, 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 I went, no, no, no. I enjoyed it. I started, which I didn't think would happen, and it did.
That's exactly.
all I gotta say.
And this is exactly what makes conversation hypnosis, which we haven't got onto yet, by the way. You realize that, right? We're just building some basic building blocks. That's exactly why conversation hypnosis can be so powerful, because they're not expecting it. Because they're not trying to help, they're not trying to resist. They just let happen what naturally happens. It makes your life so much easier, right? I got this idea from a book I was reading about a therapist. I think it could be in Grin and Bandler, but I'm not entirely sure now. And they talked about a lady who comes into their therapy clinic and sits down and starts sobbing, going, oh, this is terrible, my life's falling to pieces and people hate me. She starts sobbing, literally crying. And he turns around and says, oh, I'm sorry, we haven't started yet. Just give me a minute to get my desk ready. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, doctor. Dun, 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 dun. People have an immense capacity to pull themselves together in the right context. So even those of you interested in therapy, although we won't be focusing on therapy here at all, this is more about influence, persuasion, life in general. A lot of crossover, of course, exists there. So, my preference is to get done before you know they've started, because if they know you've started, then they'll start doing things to make it harder. So why not be done before it gets hard? Not a bad idea, is it? So thank you for that. Any other quick comments in terms of what you experienced there? All right, just stand up and we'll get the mic to you.
Hi. I found that when I mentioned the eyelids fluttering, the eyelid flutter stopped.
Thank you very much. Now, this is getting curiouser and curiouser, isn't it? I'll put this like this. You don't quite know what that means yet, hopefully. If you do, then shh. I'm just holding that there because we'll come back to this a little bit sooner than we want to get into it. But that's something very interesting that's going on there. And it's something that, as hypnotists, we need to take account for, right? Anything else you guys notice? Just stand up and we'll get a mic to you there. Jakob? Here you go.
What I noticed is my thumb started flicking.
Your thumb started flicking involuntarily, right?
Involuntarily, yeah.
So you're starting to collect things that are happening outside of your conscious involvement. Are you starting to get a little bit of this? But then we also, did anyone here have the opposite effect? Did anyone here, when they heard the idea that they can flutter their eyelids or have something happen that they don't have any conscious control of, did anyone here have the sense that that detracted from your experience, took away from it? Yeah? One person, two people, three people, put your hands right up, it's fine, right? That's a lot fewer than I expected, but well done. You're obviously pretending to be better hypnotic subject than I thought. So let's do something to soften things up a little bit. If I tell you your eyelids will start to flutter, and they don't, maybe you'll be kind enough to ignore it. Maybe you'll try really hard and then something else happens. Or maybe you just get cross with me saying, like, how am I supposed to do that, you idiot? Who knows, right? So we want to introduce a kind of language. It's a very simple language, and I think most languages that I'm aware of have a version of this that helps us to deal with these situations. It's basically moving from the language of certainty, which has words like will, you will flutter your eyelids, or you must do this, or do this now, the imperative. And we move to language, or what I call language softeners, which is more about uncertainty. If you're uncertain about something, what kind of language do you use? Maybe, possibly, right? You can, right? You know, which is the quickest way to Heathrow Airport? Well, I don't know about the quickest, but you could try this route, or maybe that route will be better. Definitely wouldn't go this one, but you might possibly find that this is the road that you're looking for. You get the idea? So throw some words out like that. We had some maybes there. What else? Perhaps. What else? You have to shout out, I can't hear it. Possibly. Could. Might. What else? May. What was that? For. Oh, sorry. That's a slightly different version of this, but we'll keep that in the back of mind. It actually works for it in a slightly different principle. Any other ones? Sorry? Now or later, right? Or sooner or later? Suppose. So notice that this could be a very long list, yes? And different languages, of course, will have different versions of how long that list is. But for now, let's take this idea and put it into what we've been doing. What I'd like you to do now is the next exercise, we'll give you 30 seconds apiece again, is do as much on that list as possible, but the thing I want you to focus on most of all is introducing the idea of language softeners, maybes, possibilities, coulds, and so on. However, I do not want you to use them exclusively. I want you to switch between the imperative and the softened, the conditional, I guess, would be the closest version of that. In other words, tell them what's going to happen. You will experience this. You will do that. I want you to do this now. And you'll switch somewhere along the lines to maybe you'll do this, or maybe you'll do that, and possibly this, and possibly that, and so on and so forth. You get the idea? And I want you to be able to switch backwards and forwards from them a few times to notice two things. I know, 30 seconds is plenty of time. I want you to notice two things in those 30 seconds that you have. First of all, how do you feel talking in these different styles? Secondly, as a hypnotist, what are you perceiving in terms of how your clients are reacting? When you are the subject, just notice how the different styles impact on you. Right? Easy to do? So as much of the rest of the list as you want, focus on the idea of language softeners, and particularly turning them on and off within that 30-second window that you have, and noticing how that impacts on you and on the session that you're beginning to develop. Easy to do? 30 seconds apiece, folks. Let's start that now. Interesting? What did you notice as either hypnotist or subject when those styles were switching? Just stand up and we'll get the mic to you right there.
Yeah, well, when I got told to, I don't know, feel my feet, was it? I thought, no, I don't want to. It was like a bit like, teacher, somebody telling me what to do. But when I just got the suggestion to feel my hands, it was like, yeah, he's actually right. I can feel my hands.
So there's something that happens when, and let me ask you this, was it the way they presented it? Like, in other words, you must notice your feet now, you didn't want to, and then you could feel your hands, and yeah, I actually can. Was that more this sort of thing? So something about the language that goes between the being told what to do, which few people like, and the more permissive sort of style, right? So this is a very crude way of distinguishing between what people call direct and indirect hypnosis. Indirect, or more accurately, is permissive hypnosis, gives options. The direct, or the more authoritarian, does not give options. Both have their value. Let me ask you this. Did anyone here have the opposite experience? In other words, they liked it when the person told them, do this, do that, and when they started going into, you could do this, you could do that, they went, just stop washing around like an idiot and whatever. So stand up. If one of you guys wants to stand up and tell me a little about that, just stand up. One of you guys. Jakob, over here.
For me, it's better if someone is more direct because I don't have to wait. It's just, for me, it's faster, and for me, it feels better.
Yeah. So you preferred it. In other words, you had a better, enhanced experience for you when someone was more direct about things, right? So what's going on here? We have two different styles, and we have two different reactions to each of those styles. Why is that happening? Well, let's think back. We talked earlier on about the idea of authority, yes? And I don't know if you're aware of this, but our state of mind is linked to our vocabulary. Let me give you a quick example of this. Has anyone here ever been angry with someone? I mean, furious with someone in their life? I know you guys are too zen-like for this, but you can imagine someone who's been like that, right? And of course, when you're angry or furious with this particular person or individual, you've gone up to them and you talk to them, well, I don't think what you said was very nice, and let me just, help you move on a little bit. That's the kind of language that you use, isn't it? Or do you use something more along the lines of, you bleep, 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 ever bleep, 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 again, bleep. Is that kind of more the language that would have come out? Your state of mind selects your vocabulary. In other words, your vocabulary expresses a state of mind. They're linked. Does that make sense? So you can often tell how people are feeling from how they're talking, especially if you pay attention to nuances. Now, one of the things that could have happened, and we're going to experiment with that right now, is that when you're switching from the authoritarian, the direct style, which is the language of certainty, do this and do that, and you switch to the more permissive style, the language softener, which is the language of uncertainty, you may have accidentally switched into a more uncertain state of mind as well, which is what you're referring to when you say, just get on with it. I just want to have the result. You see, it's one thing saying, everyone just experience this for a moment, right? Close your eyes and go into a trance. And then open them again. Close your eyes and go into a trance now, please. Same language, essentially, but my delivery has switched. And so now you're probably feeling, get on with it, right? Now let's switch it around. You could feel your left hand. Once again, you're feeling a little bit unpleasant about that, I should imagine. I'm again exaggerating this a little bit. As opposed to, and you really could feel the temperature in your left hand, could you not? Did that trigger the same thing inside you?
The second one was really better.
The second one was a lot better, wasn't it? So, the language is still the same. It's still the language that you said you didn't like. Now let's try your version here. Just close your eyes and go into a trance. Was there any resistance there? Come on back when you're ready. Did you say, no, I'm not going to do it? Why? My language was the same. It was still the teacher telling you type language. The difference is in the delivery of that language. Remember, we're coming back to this point again. We talked about earlier, what most people think is authority is just tyranny wrapped up in a nice package. It's typically when someone is uncomfortable with authority but put into a situation of having to have it, like a teacher, that the only way they can try and get control is to overdo it. So what most people think is authority is just those instances where someone's been inept enough at trying to do it that you've noticed. And all those other times, when you haven't noticed, you've responded to it quite naturally. So I need you to separate the idea of authority from the caricatures that you may have had in the past, because authority, all it is just a sense of, well, competency is part of that, is a sense of, this is just natural. Why wouldn't you do this, right? Why on earth would I waste time saying, maybe you could possibly see it inside your heart to find a reason to stand up and go over to the light switch and turn it on? Life would be very long if that's how things happened. Or you could say, it's a bit dark in here. Why don't you switch the lights on? That doesn't feel the same sort of abusiveness, shall we say, to that. Do you get the idea here? So something in your tonality, something in your state of mind, something in your mannerisms will change the way that your language is perceived. To do this, I want you to do another exercise. I'm going to give you 40 seconds just to have a little bit more playtime with this. I know it's crazy long time. It's all right, 40 seconds apiece, you know. So what we're going to do in those 40 seconds is the following. I would like you to, once again, as in the last exercise, switch between imperative language. You will experience this, you will experience that. Between imperative language and there's language softness, there's language of uncertainty. But there's basically 4 mixes you'll have. You can use the imperative in a confident tone or an authoritative tone. You'll experience this. It doesn't have to be overbearing, but as a sense of like, why wouldn't you? Then you can do the same kind of language, the same kind of imperative with some hesitation, some kind of uncertainty. You don't know how they're going to react. Then we'll do the same again with the language softness. So you'll have your, could you feel this? Maybe you'll feel your foot, or your left foot different to your right foot or whatever. And you'll do one hesitantly. Maybe you could feel that foot now. And you'll do another one as though it's the most natural thing in the world, which really is. So you might actually end up noticing your left foot more. Do you understand the difference? So we're going to cycle between both the idea of authority and uncertainty as a mental attitude, and between imperative and the more conditional sense as a linguistic attribute, and see how those things affect things. You get the idea, guys? Find a different part inside your group very quickly. And let's start now. So let's have the mics ready, please. How did that go? Was that interesting? What did you learn from that? What did you get very quickly? Nothing? Interesting? Awkward? So just stand up and we'll get the mic to you.
I found that
A little closer.
I found that when I was working with my partner, that I would say there would be an indication somewhere in your body. You will start to feel sensations. And that was my positive. That was my telling them what to do. And then I followed up by saying, it may be your fingers, it may be your eyes, it may be your shoulders. And then, of course, started to...
So now you found that you can mix and match the style, and they both enhance each other, right?
Yes, I think that my partner will agree with that.
And by the way, that's a very natural way of speaking with people, right? It is a very natural way of doing things. And the more natural you can make it, the more real the stuff becomes for you. Because right now, we're just still doing training exercises. We're not into conversation hypnosis yet. But if you start doing, clunky stuff in a conversation, hey, how's your brother? Oh, great, that's fantastic, having a good night. Like, and now, what's everything? Only more. And people do this, right? And then they wonder why people kind of sidle along the bus away from them. And why their friends are going, you're doing something, aren't you? I don't know what it is, but you're doing something. It's because they're telling them with everything except the actual saying, like, I'm going to do something now. You get the idea? But before you can be subtle, you have to kind of get the gross sort of general maneuvers before you can start reintroducing into your language. Who here is beginning to notice that something about your state of mind whilst doing all this is pretty crucial to the whole process? Are you beginning to kind of get this realization, folks? This is very important. There are many schools out there, luckily not, fewer as time goes by, but there are many schools out there that focus on scripts. And you may, if you know me, if you may understand that I have come to loathe the idea of scripts. I have nothing against the idea of scripts per se, in the sense that it's useful to study other people's performances in exactly the same way as someone will study a great musician's performance. But then to be limited to reading it, well, that doesn't make much of a hypnotist. There's no skill involved there. You just basically buy someone else's ideas and use them. More importantly, it doesn't adapt to the client before you or the person in front of you. And most important of all, for our purposes here, we're doing conversational hypnosis. How many of you have ever scripted a conversation with a friend? Hands up. One or two? It worked really well, didn't it? No. At this point, you say, you're right, Igor, and I'll glow, and I'll go, shucks, no, but really. And then you're supposed to say, no, really, you are right. All right, let's try that again. It's all your fault. Now you say? It doesn't really work in real life, does it? So why on earth would you get stuck on that level? Yes, it's good to get ideas from this. Who here, by the way, found themselves stuck for words at any point so far? You find yourself stuck for words in these last few exercises? Why do you think that is? Because your state of mind switched. And typically your state of mind switched because you're trying to do more than the simple thing I asked you to do, which is switch between language softeners and the imperative and be uncertain or certain. As soon as you started adding other things, will you be fair to say that's the point at which your mind switched and it started getting awkward and I don't know what to say? At which point, congratulations, you found out what happens when you lose your mindset, your hypnotic mindset. Feel free to carry on exploring that for a while longer if you want. Or if you want to go the comfortable route, you may decide that now is a good time to stop it. Right? It's your choice. Do you have any questions about this so far? No? Comments? Igor, you're a genius. This is so great. I'm so glad I came. Yes, you're welcome. All right, guys. So, there's a question. Just go ahead. Just grab the mic over there.
Hello, you can hear me? Yes. With the language softeners, when I was the hypnotist, I felt more comfortable. But I was not, when I said, you have to do this, I was, oh shit, will she do this or not? But now you could do this or you could do that. I was far more relaxed, and then I think I have a better energy. They are feeling.
Does anyone else have the same sort of experience that when you went more than a language softener route, you felt like, whew, the pressure's off me right now as a hypnotist, I don't have to perform as much? Anyone else notice this? What you're experiencing, by the way, is a national natural, only happens in England, reaction to pressure, essentially, performance pressure, which is one of the reasons I invite you to stop it, because you're adding something to it. There is some value in terms of what you're experiencing in the sense that whenever you make an imperative statement, you're taking a risk. You're taking the risk that they'll say no. Whenever you use language softeners, that risk is significantly diminished because there's nothing to say no to, right? Perhaps you'll experience that. No. Or perhaps not. Yes. You get where we're going with this? It would be, there's a couple of mistakes that happen in the hypnosis industry in general, and I'd like to emphasize them here because we're at that point, right? The first mistake that people make is to believe that one style, that's called the direct versus the indirect, is better than another. They just have different impacts. In terms of what research is out there, and in this level, hypnosis research is not great, so you can take everything with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But I think in terms of my anecdotal experience, it kind of bears out also. As a rule of thumb, the direct style, the more imperative style, works more quickly. However, you can run into more problems. In other words, fewer people will respond to that, or you're more likely to get some kind of a reaction to that you didn't want and have to work around it. The indirect approach, on the other hand, tends to work more slowly, but if you do it well, then resistance is futile. To show a little bit of geekiness in my background. And then people have these huge running battles about which one's better, direct or indirect. Because, I'm direct school, and look at all these wonderful results I'm getting. And the other goes, but look at my indirect school, and look at all these wonderful people I'm having results with here. I think the answer to it is, it doesn't matter. Choose what fits the situation that you're in. If you're incapable of making imperative requests of people, in other words, do this now, do that now, that is a gap in your personal style. I strongly recommend you do more of it in here to get used to being able to do it on purpose. And then you'll be able to go back to the other style and mix them together so you have the kind of blended effect of going through both. The other big mistake that I see happening in the industry, and this is specifically for the indirect hypnotists, is one of the things that this indirect style allows us to do, and we will evolve this style more because it's very, very functional in conversational hypnosis. One of these things this style allows you to do more of is, it diminishes the risk factor of not being wrong, right? So it really attracts a mindset that is insecure. Oh, you mean I can do hypnosis and not be right? Okay, well, maybe your hand will lift, or maybe you'll close your eyes, or maybe you'll go into a trance this way, or maybe you'll go into a trance that way. They give these long, rambling lists of possibilities, which linguistically are great, but there is no power behind them. And by power, I mean power over someone. It's just your own personal power, your sense of authority, your sense of just sheer credibility. Milton Erickson, who was a hypnotic genius from whose foundation basically informed most of what we're doing here, he had no problem with this idea of authority, this idea of power. He actually was reported in one of the papers he talks about, actually one of the books of one of his students talking about a council or other he was working at on a board of something or other. And he was talking about it, and he said, well, how do you find those people? And he looked at him with a little twisted little glee in his eye and said, the problem with these people is they had no power behind them. And by that, what he really was talking about is they were spineless. Spineless hypnosis does not work very well. And indirect hypnosis is something that attracts spineless hypnotists a lot because they can't be wrong. But you still won't get any results. The results come from exactly what you just experienced doing. Whether you're going for the direct approach, you can soften your delivery of it so you don't get the resistance as much. Or you can go for the indirect approach and still have enough authority in what you're doing that they'll skip the choice element and go straight to the instruction part of it. Do you understand the essence here? The problem happens when you're outside of that bandwidth, when you're just being directive, like the caricature schoolmaster that is too stern, too tyrannical, because they don't understand authority. Or on the other side of it, when you're spineless, essentially, and give so many options, hoping one of them will come true somehow, but you have so much doubt yourself, you're riddled with insecurities, which get very nicely transferred as an indirect suggestion itself, for them to do nothing with it. There's another hypnotist, George Estabrooks, who was kind of the bad boy of hypnosis. You can look him up if you want. Not a very nice man, but some interesting things. And one of the things that he talked about, and just to give you an example, one of the things that made him less of a pleasant person is he openly bragged about working with the CIA, trying to create hypnotic assassins. Luckily, he failed. But, still, it went down a very twisty path. And one of the things that he said, and I think this is very true of hypnosis, is that your subjects will absolutely decline to respond to any suggestions that you don't believe in yourself. Now, is there some kind of mind juju going on there? Or is it that your tonality, your voice quality changes as a result of your mental shift that suggests to them something in a sort of backdrop, in other words, enough doubt, that they won't respond to it? Ultimately, it doesn't matter for our purposes. What we know is happening is this. If your state of mind is out of place, then all the language in the world will do absolutely nothing for you. If your state of mind is in the right place, then having the wrong words will still have a tremendously positive impact. You can be a great force for good for people. If your mindset and your language are both in the right place, then you are virtually unstoppable. Does that make sense to you guys? And a lot of people come to something like this trying to learn the language. What's a more cool language? What shall I say in this situation? What do I do in that situation? And sometimes the answer isn't what you say or do. It's who you are in that situation that counts. Do you understand the difference? You begin to get a sense of this idea of the mindset being so important. And it's one of the reasons I like to say to people, hypnosis is not something you do to people. That's a very old model. It's not even something you do with people, which is a more modern idea of the hypnotic relationship. In my opinion, hypnosis is something you become. It's a mindset that just permeates everything that you do just because it's the mindset that you're in. Sure, you'll fall out of it from time to time, but if it's a mental habit, then you'll find yourself doing it when it's useful and not when it's not. Do you get the idea? So would it be fair to say that this might be an important point to rehearse, this mindset that we're getting into? So we're going to do something more around that, but before we get into this, let's talk a little more about this authority thing, because that's kind of really tied into this mindset that we're talking about. We've started getting this idea that being tyrannical is not what we mean by it. So what is authority, and how does it work? Technically speaking, you can do hypnosis without authority and make it work very, very well. The problem with that approach is it requires so much subtlety to kind of nudge someone the opposite way by purposely failing, so that basically by failing with them, they're actually getting them to the place that you want them to be anyways. But it requires such subtlety that at this kind of level, it's really no point going down that route. Does that make sense to you guys? The authority version is a much better, much more reliable and useful in many more contexts. But what does we mean by authority? Let's look at the idea of relative status in groups. All human beings, at some levels, are mammals. In other words, we share a huge amount of our genetic codes with them. And when it comes to just our brain structures, a huge amount of our brains are very similar to mammals, and we act exactly like mammals for a lot of things. There's one thing that is true of all mammals beyond what your biological textbooks told you, which is the whole idea of nurturing their young. And that is that all mammals form hierarchies. They're territorial and they form hierarchies. It's as true of humans as others. Now, you may live in the most benign hippie commune, let's all love the world and hug trees and all the rest of it in the world, and believe absolutely wholeheartedly that every person in your community has an equal voice and uses it equally. And I will guarantee you, behaviorally, there will be a huge difference. There will be people who are naturally more dominating in those groups, and people who naturally will follow those leads more often than not. And those relationships can change over time as well. Do you get the idea? Now let's have a look at what the values are of being at different points in this pecking order, just to get rid of this idea that a particular approach is better than another. It only has an impact. So let's take the idea of a pack of dogs or wolves or something like that, because it's a simple metaphor we can think of. What is the advantage of being the what they call the alpha dog, the leader of the pack? What does he get out of the deal? The girls, yeah. He gets the status. He gets to eat first. He gets to make the decisions. In other words, go where he wants to go and everyone else has to follow, etc. Right? What are the downsides? There's much more pressure. He's subject to constant challenge, or possibly the subject to constant challenge. And he's going to make decisions for the group. And ultimately, if danger threatens the group, it's his primary, or her, depending on the nature of the things, it's their primary responsibility to protect the group and then lead the defense and so on. Let's contrast that to the end of the pack, the runt of the litter, so to speak. What's the advantage of being that? No responsibility at all, right? But you're still part of the pack, which means even though you get to eat last, you still get to eat, right? You won't be in the front line when your pack gets attacked. You'll kind of be carrying the back going, oh, help me, right? So it has its value. And understanding that, you can understand human relationships much more, because there'll be always some kind of dominance and some kind of submissive elements to it. And I hesitate to use those words because they're very loaded in our culture. And I don't mean them in the same loaded way, in the same way as authority is loaded in our culture, being like the stern school teacher. That is not authority. That is an abuse of authority. Do you get the idea? And the same thing is going on with the idea of status. Status and authority are linked to each other. What's my current status right now? Let's go with the simple. High or low? I am telling you with all my mannerisms that, what I'm saying is really not worth paying attention to, right? Is it getting better yet? Is my status increased? What about now? Right? What about now? What about now? Are you beginning to get a sense of what's going on here? I'd like you to be aware of these things that you're doing yourselves. Because as a rule, if you find yourself doing this, and all of us do this, it doesn't matter how bullish, how dominant, how tyrannical, how whatever you want to call yourself may be, Everyone has moments when they go to this. And everyone has moments when they can have that. The mix may be very tilted to one end or the other, but we all do it, right? And I want you to be aware of it because those signals are telling others how to respond to your suggestions. Now, even here, it's much more important conversation notice because people's eyes will be open. But even here, with someone's eyes closed, do you think they can tell the difference between this and between that? They can, because if nothing else, your voice projects differently. And unconsciously, they've only heard that style of projection before when people were doing this, and it all ties up together. It's part of the implicit learning cycle. You get the idea? So how does the world's greatest hypnotist sit in his or her chair? Exactly. How many of you switched positions? I would encourage you to think of it this way. If you did not shift your own position when I asked that question, then you haven't really enriched your model of what's possible for you sufficiently. What I'd like you to do now for the next exercise is I would like for you to make a caricature of this authority. In other words, overemphasize your openness, because that's authority signals, overemphasize your tonal qualities, and notice what happens inside your brain when you're doing that. What is going on inside your state of mind? How comfortable can you be doing these things versus these things? And see if you can track your state of mind and how it reflects inside of your physical body and inside of your tonality. Do you get the idea of this? Is that for me? I hear a nice phone going off there. It is. I think people just want me to talk to them because, I'm nice sometimes. No, stop calling! Anyways. So what I want you to do now, so that was just a little joke. Or was it? Have someone call you, we'll find out. What I want you to do now is get inside your group, find a new partner. You should be getting close to having worked with around your group now. Just very quickly find a new partner. So you should all have a partner now. When you're sitting down with them, all I want you to do is, we'll just keep it short, it's 20 seconds apiece. I don't care how good a job you do with this. I just want you to get used to being able to speak while simultaneously getting a sense of where is your mental state at. Can you shift up or down a gear mentally? And how does that affect your tonality and your body language? And with the aim of being the world's greatest hypnotist, not the world's second greatest, or even the world's best beginner. You get the idea? Cycle through all three so you get a sense of what they feel like inside your body, and so you learn to recognize when you're not there. Make sense? Off you go. So was that fun to do, yes? Yeah. Who here is starting to get more of a sense of how they're feeling inside as they're going into the actual doing stuff, right? Now, ultimately, the point will be not that you notice when you're in the right state. The point is to notice when you're not in the right state. Because when you are in the right mindset, you should be a bit too busy doing stuff. And if you find it somehow awkward or something's going on, check your mindset and go, oh yeah, I better switch my mental gears up a step or two. Make sense? I'll make you one promise, one guarantee. If you stay in this mindset that we're starting to develop now, that you've got some glimpses of now, we'll evolve it. But to the extent that you stay inside of that mindset unwaveringly, you will never run out of things to say. And the chances that you will get the right exact thing for the right time, the right moment right there, are several orders of magnitude higher than doing it any other way. In other words, you'll find the words more easily, you'll find the relationship easier for you to develop, and you'll find opportunities arise that would otherwise not come for you. Does that make sense to everyone? So I personally would encourage you to do more of it. Now, with that thought in mind, we're going to do something completely different now. What I'd like you to do is two things. The first thing I want you to do is, if you have any personal belongings, like bags or notepads and so on, I'd like you to move them all to one side in a moment's time. If you have any drinks, or if you don't have any drinks, especially if they're running around you, I would like you to please move them to the back of the tables. Please keep them away from the electronics, especially on this table here as well, just because things may get knocked, and that's not very good. So if you see any cups, especially if they're full, please move them to the back table anyways. The third thing I'm going to ask you to do at the same time is move all the chairs to one side of the room and the other, so we have a big empty space inside the middle. Make sure you know where you put your personal belongings, because a lot of people in this room, and I'm sure you want to find them again afterwards. All right, guys, a lot of you will have seen this stuff already, especially if you've trained with me before, so bear with me and have fun. If you've seen this before, if you've done these kind of exercises before, you'll see what I mean in a minute. What I want you to do is push yourself further. In other words, how much of this mindset you started getting into right now can you add onto the exercise we're about to do? Does that make sense to you guys? If you haven't seen this before, it's irrelevant. You'll have your hands full with the exercise. All right, so let's go this way. Oh, there's some size of recognition here. Now, everyone knows this word, because, correct? All I want you to do is very simply come up with 2 random concept, ideas, statements, and link them with the word because in any way without any rhyme or reason, right? And they have to be as completely and utterly illogical, unintelligible, and nonsensical as possible, right? The ideas themselves may be just fine. For example, there's traffic outside because I have a potato in my room. Now, you may have noticed each of those ideas, the X, there's traffic outside, and I have a potato in my room, whilst maybe an unusual thing to have in a hotel room, makes sense, totally, right? You put them together with the idea of because, and suddenly, the only people who can make sense of that have been visiting Amsterdam. Or not taking their medication, right? You get the idea? Now, I want you in a moment to go around and just kind of like the meeting group we did earlier, don't worry about social niceties, just go straight up to someone with a random thing, you know, there's a carpet in the room here because God has blue nostrils. If that makes sense to you guys, then welcome. Then he'll say something equally unintelligible to myself, and then we'll move on to meet someone else and do the same thing. So there's no social niceties. This is just trading of complete insanity. Make sense? What I am looking for here is, number 1, enthusiasm. It's part of the mindset. And number 2 is speed. If you're like, yes, well, yeah, I got it. The ocean is big because the sun is small. If that's what's happening, is you've missed the point, all right? I want it so fast that the only way you know what you have said is if you listen onto what you've said just afterwards and go, did I just say that? Does that make sense to you guys? Mentally, you should feel like you're right on the edge of some platform about to fall off. Now, from time to time, I fully expect a couple of you might go, stumped. Great. The way out of that is to go faster. You get the idea? All right, guys, off you go. Good. Did you have fun with that? Was that easy to do? Great. So in that case, it'll be much easier to do 2 versions at the same time, right? I don't care if you run them on as a long sentence or if you have 2 separate concepts, one which is the because and one with the which means. I'll give you an example. There's a fire burning in Madrid because my shoelaces are undone. I'll use the run-on version now. Which means that there is a carp with gangrene in the lake. Don't ask me why. The alternative version would be, there's a blue car driving down the road because there's a giant with a great hat on. There's a chair with a king on it, which means tomorrow is Tuesday. Am I actually right about that? No, thank God I'm not. I was close to making sense. All right, guys, you get the idea? You have a choice of stars. I don't care which it is, but I do want you to use because and which means as often as possible in this completely random way of linking things together. Off you go. Good. Was that easy to do? Yeah, fun? Get a little more challenging with more things, right? So the next one will be easy. We're just going to have 3 now, okay? Exact same pattern. This one's the easiest one because you just have and, you just have more random stuff to put in between them. Use all 3 of those, either in one long sentence or in 3 individual ones. I don't care. It's up to you. You get the idea? Yeah? Okay, how's that? Was that fun? Getting more interesting? Who's ready for a challenge? Let's do 5 at the same time. So the same pattern is following, because, which means and. As soon as X, then Y. So you get the same idea, right? As soon as my feet are large enough, then I will walk all over the world. That kind of makes sense, but who knows? And then whenever X, Y, right? Whenever a sparrow flies from the south, then the north goes up. Yeah. Whose head's going to look like, whoa, what's going on here? Don't worry, it's not a mind-bending language thing. This is just a fun game. You get the idea of that, right? I want you to use all 5 with one person and get all 5 back. And whilst you're reeling like a drunkard, go to the next person and do it again. Speed and enthusiasm and volume are the key here. Off you go. Good. How's that? Is that fun? A little bit confusing, but kind of overall fun. Yeah? Very confusing. So let's start making it a little bit easier on you. It's going to actually seem more constrained, but actually you'll find it a lot easier. What I'd like you to do is, right now, it's kind of, have you noticed it's difficult to come up with random, meaningless stuff? Yeah? So from now on, for the next exercise, you only need to come up with half amount of random, meaningless stuff. The rest of it can be quite meaningful. The kind of meaningful that we want to have specifically, though, is something that basically approximates the qualities that you've experienced once you were pretending to go into these wonderful trances earlier on today. Now, would it be fair to say that whilst you were being the hypnotic subjects pretending to go into a trance, that you felt yourself have certain experiences that are different to when you're normally around chatting with people, right? For example, how many of you here started to feel a little bit more relaxed even though you only had a few seconds to do that in? So that's most of the room, right? So would it be fair to say that relaxation, although not an imperative, in other words, you can have hypnosis without relaxation, having hypnosis and relaxation, or rather having relaxation, will make it easier to go towards the hypnotic condition, shall we say, right? They're not necessary, but it helps, right? What other kind of themes did you notice happening inside your mind whilst you were pretending to go into a trance? Just shout them out. Peaceful. How many people here started having a sort of peaceful feeling? Hands up. It's about a third of the room or so. That's good. That can come on the list. Flow. What do you mean by flow? There you go. So it's a smooth flow of ideas. So lack of judgment. So let's keep that out for the moment, because that's a lack of something. I'm looking for a presence of something for now, right? Say again? Inner focus. Yep. Anyone else have that sense of inner focus? And awareness. So tuning out. So let's have a little survey here. Who found their awareness increasing overall? Hands up. So again, about half of the room. Who found them tuning out? In other words, their external awareness kind of generally disappearing or dissipating. So it's about the other half of the room. So kind of even out, right? So notice how we have 2 competing ideas. The idea of awareness increasing and the idea of awareness decreasing in terms of the just focusing, tuning out and so on. Whoop. There we go, just like that. Both are characteristic of the mental changes that can go into hypnosis. It doesn't matter which route they take, but one of the routes will definitely be helpful. Does that make sense? Whilst technically it's possible to suggest 2 mutually contradictory ideas like this, I recommend you stay clear of it for the moment, right? So you get the idea. There's quite a nice list of things going on here, but the list could be bigger, right? What I'd like you to do is choose one simple one. In fact, the one I like, but you haven't said yet, but I'll do it anyway, because my list feels incomplete without it, is comfort, okay? I'd like you to choose one of those themes and stick to it. Everyone have one of those themes in mind, right? It could be any of them: calm, comfort, peacefulness, inner focus, smooth flow of ideas, awareness, and so on. I do not care which it is, but choose one, and that's the one you'll be sticking to. Does that make sense to everyone, yes? Now all you're going to do is go back to our crazy talk with the power words. Your X part of the equation will stay the same, still as random, right? There's a crane lifting a block of concrete in London because The y portion of this equation is the one I'm interested in right now. And all I want you to do here is introduce your trance theme in any way you wish to, because you can relax. The ideas are totally unrelated, but I don't care about that right now. Do you get the idea? There's a tomato plant with pink dots on it in Syria, which means your relaxation can grow now. Totally unrelated. And yet, a strange sense starting to make sense here, isn't it? Isn't that weird? I'd like you to explore that, again, just walking around with people. I would like for you to do it with all 5 statements, the because, which means, and, as soon as, whenever, and so on, with the same person. Go through all 5. You don't have to flow them, you can just have one after the other. And once you've done all 5, they'll have a chance to do all 5 with you, and you'll move on, right? So basically, you're collecting 5 random ideas. You're attaching the same trance theme 5 times, although you can change the way you deliver the idea. Relaxation can be talked about in many different ways, right? And you're linking them with these power words in between. Do you all understand the nature of this exercise? Yes? Is there a question over there? Can we put the words higher up? All right, this is about as high as they'll go, given that the screen doesn't go any higher than that. Is that helpful? Okay. All right, folks, off you go. How'd that go? Was that fun? My stage is shorter, I don't know why. Who here is finding that coming up with the trance theme is actually easier than it is with the random stuff beforehand? Hands up. Isn't that interesting? Your unconscious mind is designed to make meaning of things. We are meaning-making machines, if you like. That means it's actually easier to talk sensibly, to give meaningful suggestions to someone else than not to. It's easier for you to start talking about something randomly and for it to start making sense automatically than not to. And that means, again, that you should have absolutely no need to try and sound logical or sensible in any of your suggestions, because that will happen anyways. It's in the act of searching for it that you engage, where do you go? Whoop. The law of reversed effect, and you inhibit the very thing you're trying to create. Do you get the idea of this? I'd like to demonstrate that to you now, if I may. What we're going to do now is the same exercise again, only this time we're going to change the X as well into a separate trance theme. So let's say you chose relaxation last time. The relaxation will still be the Y. But the X over here will be a separate trance theme, like smoothing flow of ideas, or peacefulness, or inner focus, or awareness, etc. You get the idea? But just one again. Then you'll go back to your language. Let's take peacefulness and relaxation just because they're 2 first items on the list. You can feel peaceful because you have the capacity to relax. And that peacefulness, which means relaxation is occurring naturally, and bringing further peace of mind to you, is something you'll discover as soon as you physically relax your body. Then you'll have inner peace start to develop. Whenever you relax yourself, your body and mind become more peaceful. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, what did I just say? All I told you was peacefulness, relax, 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 feel peaceful, relax, relax, feel peaceful, right? And that works too. Yet somehow, with these trance themes, with these power words in between them, it flows more smoothly as an idea, doesn't it? Right? So that's what I'm going to ask you to do. Again, with your walking around the room with as many people as possible, you'll get to go through the 5 items. I don't care about the order, by the way. The order is now irrelevant, as long as you get the idea of this language. And then choose 2 trance themes, which you'll have in the X and Y positions, and just flow through it. I really don't care which way around they go. Just go naturally with it. The point is, you're going to be rifting around the idea of, in this case, peacefulness and relaxation with those power words, all as one simple unit. You'll get the idea of this, yes? Any questions? All right, guys, off you go. Okay, guys, go ahead and grab your chairs. Come back into the groups you started with today. So welcome back. Did you enjoy the exercise? Yes. Who here found that using this sort of smooth hypnotic language that we're starting to develop now was easier when you had something purposeful to focus on, like the idea of relaxation and peacefulness and so on, than being random? Put your hands up. Once again, it has to do with your mindset. There are only two reasons why you can ever get stuck in terms of what to say next, in terms of, especially in hypnosis and suggestions and so on. We'd like to know what those two reasons are. Yep. The first reason you already explored earlier this morning, which is you're trying too hard. You're trying to do too much, or you're thinking too hard, etc., and you're blocking yourself. You've activated the law of reverse effect, right? The second reason, and strangely, people don't really realize this one, is that you don't know what to, you have nothing to say, you have no purpose. If you have no purpose, if you have nothing to say, how on earth are you going to say it? Your mind, all words are, is your mind trying to bring up little vehicles of ideas that are doing the best thing to kind of demonstrate to another human being what's going on inside of your mind, right? It's an awkward, relatively clumsy system, but it's better than the alternative, right? If you have no idea you're trying to communicate, then no wonder you have nothing to say, because you literally have nothing to say. So you're doing it right. You get the idea? As a default idea, in other words, when you're kind of stuck between ideas in terms of how to develop things, there are two things you can explore, and I'm going to ask you to explore them now before we have lunch, a lunch break. The first thing, let me just put these things up a second. So we can add on to this the idea of power words, right? And we can add on to this the idea of trance themes as well. Get the idea, right? And you realize, of course, that the list of power words and list of trance themes that we have created together is only a small sample of what's possible. You can generate a huge variety of these things, just using the same basic idea, right? Power words fundamentally work on the idea of conjunctions, because, and, which means, and so on, right? Including and so on. And trance themes are, you'll be able to collect more of them as you have more trance experiences. You'll have more qualities that you can talk about, right? But for now, you have a nice little handful of things. So if you're ever stuck in terms of not knowing what to say because you have nothing really to say that's worth saying in the session, then just go back to your trance themes. Relaxation, focus, awareness, feeling good, peacefulness. These are generally nice things to have in life anyway, aren't they? So you can always fall back on them. They're not necessarily as appropriate conversationally, right? You know, you're standing at a cocktail party, so what's your name? Great. And you can relax drinking that drink whilst relaxing your feet and relaxing your collar and relaxing your head, relaxing your mind. They're going to go, what the hell's wrong with this person, right? So the idea doesn't necessarily translate as easily to conversational stuff, but the principle does. You just have to have different conversational themes that you can talk about. Does that make sense? So we're taking baby steps. So the first thing, if you're ever stuck because you have nothing to say, then choose an idea, a trance theme, to fill that gap for you, and then really go for it, and that will open up new ideas. The second choice that you have, which is equally good at the right time, is that one. Do you get the idea? A lot of people try and fill silences because they think they've got to, say something, and then, it's like, you think, kind of, aren't these just word fillers? They're just trying to fill the space up whilst you're searching for something. It is much more powerful if you're going to present a suggestion, especially if you just give them some idea, when you just let them do it. Right? Then notice what's just happened inside you when I started saying less. Who here is starting to feel like their mind's slowing down a little bit? Hands up. Who feels like their body is kind of a little more comfortable? Hands up. How did that happen? Because without pauses, you have no time to actually experience the suggestion. So one of the greatest concerns that most people, hypnotists have is solved by two tools that actually makes what you're suggesting more powerful anyways. It's great, isn't it? Because anytime you get stuck in the future, you know you're about to do something more powerful than you were about to, which is you're the pause, you go back to your trance themes. Either way you win, don't you? All I'm going to ask you to do now is with one partner in your group, it's going to be a very quick exercise, is start with the close your eyes things. You can do as much of these other things, the coaching, the trance signals, ratifying it, of course, your authority is going to be part of that. Your hypnotic voice is going to be part of that. You're going to give them some hypnotic thoughts to mull over. It's really very similar to trance themes at this point, but actually it goes in a slightly different direction. It's a little more symbolic, I think you guys have probably found. You can suggest voluntary and involuntary things. Use your language softener, your power words, your trance. There's a lot of stuff you can do here, isn't there? The key ones I want you to focus on, just because we've been doing it, are these two, the power words and the trance themes. You can use as much or as little of the previous stuff as you wish, as much or as little. But just focus on the power words and the trance themes as part of this little exercise here. Does it make sense to you guys? And remember, from time to time, off you go. Okay, guys, how'd that go? Was that fun? If anyone has any quick comments or questions on that before we go to lunch break, just put your hands up or stand up. Okay, great. So hopefully you're learning something as hypnotists right now. I think you have a lot of food for thought, so you may as well add a different kind of food to your palate so that you're digesting more than one thing at the same time, right? It is now 12:35. Let's take an hour and a half for lunch. If you're back here at 2 p.m., we'll start at 2:05 on the dot. Okay, guys?